This is Orange Nation Overtime with Stephen Fonte and Paulie Sibilia.
Welcome into Orange Nation Overtime, everyone. Alongside Paulie Sibilia, I'm Stephen Fonte. It's a Thursday, which means we've got both Adrian Autry and the voice of the Orange, Matt Park, on our Orange Nation radio show. And, going into it, we knew we had a lot of different questions we want to ask Adrian Autry about the defense, about rebounding, really about this four-game losing streak. And, we talked at the top of the show, Paulie, that what we've seen out of this team the last four games, it is not the team we saw like back in Vegas, for instance, especially on the defensive end of the court.
Yeah, the intensity. Even the coaches at those games, if you watch them, they were right up on the floor telling everybody, get down, get on them. That's got to come back.
Yeah, and it does seem like there is a lack of urgency at a time where there needs to be urgency, right? And we saw it especially at the end of these last two games against Miami and NC State, where the game started to slip away from them, and it just seemed like they kind of waved the white flag down the stretch of both of those games, and something that's got to end because there is a lot of basketball left to be played. This team is currently on a four-game losing streak. You got to beat Notre Dame, because if you don't, look at the schedule after that. Right after that, it's North Carolina and Virginia both on the road. This losing streak could go on for a while if they don't take care of business on Saturday.
Yeah, and if it does, I don't want to come to work anymore. Is that okay? I don't want to deal with the fans.
It's not okay.
Hey, did you see this, Steve? Let's have a happy note before we go to Coach Autry. The Naismith Defensive Player of the Year awards have been announced. The mentions for William Kyle's on that list.
He deserves it.
For the watch list. So is Malik Brown.
Okay.
A lot of Syracuse.
So good at poking the ball.
Yeah. The poker, as I used to call him.
So good at that. William Kyle deserves it. And on the women's side of things, Uche Ezoje up for that same award. She was just added as well. Let's get to...
I'm on a watch list, too.
Yeah, what are you watching for?
It's a watch out if this guy's in your neighborhood.
Let's get to our interview with Adrian Autry. And as always, we let him off by asking him about the previous game and what went wrong, especially in that second half against NC State.
Not being able to... get to the spots that we needed to get to, and I thought that's where that was the difference in the game. They made us pay, and like I said after my press conference, we're in this league, and when you have that many breakdowns in pivotal times, that can cost you the game, and I thought that's what happened. Some breakdowns, and they capitalized on them.
You talk about the defense, and when you go back to Las Vegas, has there been a change in the defensive intensity by your team from then to now?
I think we have. I think, especially the last 4 or 5 games, I think our dips are longer now. So the intensity has not been the same. And that's what we've talked about and addressed. But also, the attention to detail, especially once you get into conference, has to be at a level 5, and it's not there. And it's costing us. I mean, again, some games have been, back and forth, and then the minute that we slip up, these teams have made us pay, and we can't do that. Before, we were being able to defend and overcome that and hold teams to some long scoring droughts, and that hasn't been the case consistently, especially late in the second half. In the first half, we've gotten some. In the second half, we haven't.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, Coach, I mean, to Paulie's point, you look at the numbers from the last 4 games during this losing streak. Gave up 81 points. I know there was an overtime game, but 81 points at Boston College, 76 against Virginia Tech, and then 85 to Miami, 88 to NC State. And you said you've noticed a difference. Can you put your finger on why it's happening? Why the change from a month or so ago to the way that the team's defending right now?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the teams the quality of the opponents that we are playing. Being in a league with the ACC is back, so to speak. As far as that, and we've played against some really good teams, and so I think that has something to do with it. And I think we've been like I said, some of our communication and breakdowns, they haven't been as consistent as they need to be, and that's the stuff that we're talking about and trying to really work on every day, as far as that point of just having that high level communication, because that's what it is. High level talk, high level rotations, and then finishing our possessions. With 5 guys rebounding, not just relying on our front court. And I think those are the things that we're trying to address right now.
You bring up rebounding. That's obviously been an issue these last 2 games against Miami and NC State. And, Paulie and I were talking about it earlier in the week that, you guys switched to zone. You were able to get some missed shots out of the zone, but then, just couldn't corral that defensive rebound to end the possession, and they got a lot of second chance points. I guess, can you speak to what's going on the glass right now? And, would you like to play more zone, but maybe hesitant to because of the struggles on the glass at the moment?
Yeah, like you said, I think the zone has been good for us to get the initial stop, to get the initial miss, but securing the rebound has been an issue. And a lot of that is sometimes when you play 2 different defenses, in the zone, you kind of got to go get it. And man, we stress putting a body on people, and in the zone, you're coming down where, some of those bigger guys are on the inside position already. So that's always been a little tough. That's why it's always been hard rebounding out of the zone. So we got to make that adjustment. We haven't played a ton of it until now. So I think that adjustment will happen. And then, defensively, when you talk about man-to-man, I think it's 5 guys. We're spread out now. In this league, these 5 men are out in the perimeter, shooting and transporting. So, and Will and Donnie are our best rebounders. A lot of times those guys are away. So our wings and guards have to get more involved in rebounding.
How would you evaluate Nathan George's play? He gets it tough from the fans. He gets it tough from this radio show. He's the point guard. How would you evaluate his play?
I think Nate, he's had his moments. I think also, a lot of the, it's like the quarterback. Like, other people have to, do their job as well. But for the most part, I think a lot of the blame or a lot of the talk or whatever, some of it is, that's what it is. But some of it is our guys, our team, us helping him and helping these situations. Whether it's doing a better job of screening and holding screen. Whether it's doing a better job of catching the ball with 2 hands. Again, when you have a guy like him that has the vision, ability to get people the ball, all the time. Really, really good point guards. They, like quarterbacks, they take those risks sometimes, and that's what makes them good, because it typically works out more than others, more times than none. And so, I think it's really, those situations. But overall, I think it's just the team. We all have to do a better job, including the coaching staff, of just being more solid and sound.
Coach, you said something the other night after the NC State game that, people have been kind of speculating about what you meant when you said, everything's on the table right now. And there's been, a lot of talk about, what does that mean? What could it mean? Is it lineup changes? Is it, strategic changes? Can you get into it all? What that means? Everything on the table? And are there some changes that you're considering right now as things move along?
I think when you go through this stretch as a coach, you're trying to unlock something, especially, in a losing streak. You're trying to unlock something. So what I meant by that is that, everything that you said, you're looking at different things, combinations, schemes, and that's what I mean by everything is on the table, as opposed to, if you're winning, you kind of stick with what you want to. If you kind of got a little, one off, 1 or 2, but when you lose consecutively, I think, like anything, you have to, you're always evaluating as a coach, but I think you really have to take a deep dive in when you go through a rough patch like that, a rough patch like we're going through right now. And so that's what I meant by that. I'm looking at everything and seeing where we can make a change for the betterment of the team, and not a quick fix, something that can, help us to finish up these last 10 games.
How's the morale in the locker room through this rough stretch, Coach?
I think the morale is, as good as it can be. These guys still believe. We know we have, the ingredients in here, and these guys have, they have a lot of belief in, what we're doing, and they know, and we know we all have to do a better job of what we're doing. And I think that's what it comes down to. And again, we have a resilient group, and we're going to keep going and keep, moving forward.
And as you talk about moving forward, next is Notre Dame on Saturday, a team that is without its best player, right? Marcus Burton broke his ankle back in early December, but they're playing better basketball late. They just gave Virginia everything they could handle the other night, and Virginia ended up coming back and winning in double overtime. But it's a team that seems to be getting better now that they've had 6 weeks or so without their best player. What do you make of this Notre Dame team that you're seeing?
Coach Shrewsbury, his teams are always going to be tough. They're going to compete. They're going to play hard, and obviously shooting is a big part of what they do. Being able to space the floor. I mean, so they will never stop playing. So and our last couple of games have been right down to the wire. So I expect the same. A hard-fought 40-minute game.
Coach, also this weekend we get wrapped up in the basketball side of things and the wins and losses, but Lawrence Moten will be honored at this game. Your thoughts on that, and maybe getting fans out to that?
Yeah, I'm so obviously he was a dear friend of mine and a teammate of mine, he was the epitome of like, just like he loved Syracuse and he loved this program and he loved this community, and I'm just glad that we are honoring him. And I would, if anybody can get to the game, come on and support him, because he's a true Orange in and out, and a friend of mine that I dearly miss. And obviously, you get a little emotional when you ask me that question. But just he was just a great teammate and a great friend.
That's Adrian Autry. You heard him talk about everything being on the table. Paulie, what does that mean to you when you hear everything's on the table right now?
We're throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks, is what it sounds like to me.
Is there a change you would like to see made, whether it's starting lineup, somebody playing more?
Discussed it, defensive intensity for the whole game.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be nice. And they've gotten away from that, because that was the one thing we felt like, all right, this is non-negotiable. They're going to do this every game this year. They're going to be in every game. And that has not happened, especially of late, especially these last two in particular, giving up 80-plus to Miami and NC State. We also had the voice of the Orange, Matt Park, on our Orange Nation radio show today. And you let him off by asking about NIL. It's a topic that's come up over the course of the last week, ever since we had Randolph Childress on last week. And he brought up NIL with us. And, you brought up the point at the top of the show today that we hear it across the board, really. Coaches everywhere, even here at Syracuse, it's Fran Brown, it's Adrian Autry, Felicia Leggett, Jack. Everybody's asking for more NIL. It seems like Red in particular is the one getting pushback about that.
Yes, and it's also Syracuse is middle of the pack in all sports, and they're in the ACC. So you're middle of the pack ACC. You're not middle of the pack SEC or Big Ten. There's so many things working against Syracuse.
Yeah, and I do think some of it is, fans don't want to hear about NIL right now, because at the beginning of the season, it felt like, okay, they've dedicated more resources to this roster. The roster is better. This roster should be able to compete for an NCAA tournament bid, and right now that's not happening. And so I think folks are just... it falls on deaf ears, because I don't want to hear about NIL. I just want this team to go out and produce and win games, which I do understand.
Steve, it's National Corn Chip Day.
Hang on. Save that thought. We got to get to Matt Park first, and then we'll come back and you can tell us about National Corn Chip Day. So let's talk.
I thought we already did that.
No, we haven't gotten there yet. We got to play the interview.
I missed a 3-2-1 somewhere.
We got to play that right now. Voice of the Orange, Matt Park. You brought up the NIL with him and why fans are so averse to hearing about it right now. Take a listen.
I observe it as much as anybody. I listen to this show virtually every day, 7 hours a week or something like that. And I doom scroll on Twitter as much as anybody. So I see a lot of it. I think the people that are responsible for that chatter are just going to say what they want to say a lot of the time. There's a big part of it, and they don't want to hear any excuses. They don't want to hear the hows and whys that you arrive in a certain spot, and there's just people that are going to tune out and don't want it. There's a segment that don't want it to be part of college basketball, and that might not be the same that just don't want to hear the excuses. So people, I think, would rather just be angry than deal with some of that reality. And I also think it gets misconstrued. They didn't lose the Hofstra game because the NIL was insufficient, right? And nobody's saying that. So I think what happens is there's that cycle of the snark and, you know, I'm as snarky as the next guy, I think, but the snark of, well, gee, they needed more NIL to beat blank. That's not really what it's about. I mean, NIL speaks to what type of roster you have, and what type of roster you have talks about maybe the floor of your team. And this team is better than last year. It has a better floor. And then they've gone out and blown a few games that they should have won, which has made this season really concerning. You know, the whole NIL conversation, I think, is frustrating for a lot of folks in and out of the industry and everything, because it's really questionable about its sustainability. It does put a lot of programs under stress, and the idea of continuing to fund the way you've got to fund the modern rosters. And it hasn't worked out great for Syracuse to this point, certainly Syracuse basketball, which is what we're talking about here. But, you know, I'm sure you've got other things to get into. I don't know what you really want to know about it. I mean, if you're asking me why you're asking me why do people not want to hear it, you know, that's my stab at it, I guess.
Let me ask you the question that Randolph Childress asked
that's where I was going next too. Yeah.
Where do you think Syracuse ranks in NIL in any sport overall in the ACC?
Middle of the pack. You know, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, something like that. You're just not going to be at the same level as Duke, Carolina, Louisville, NC State, Clemson, right off the top. You know, and maybe I skip. Oh, did I say Florida State? Skip them. Miami. You know, you can look at these last couple of opponents, Miami and NC State. If you want to talk about, without even knowing the numbers, and we're not privy to the numbers, generally speaking, right? Quickly, last year Syracuse's transfers came in from Hofstra, Delaware, Georgia State. They weren't good enough, right? This year's transfers came in from Georgia Tech, somebody who didn't play that much at UCLA. They're better, no question about it. Miami's transfers were a starter at Michigan, starter at Indiana. They don't have maybe as deep a team, but their top handful, their top 2 or 3 core, that was maybe their approach, and they're better. NC State gets a Player of the Year candidate in the conference imported from Texas Tech. You know, they had guys that went to the Elite 8 at their schools last year, Texas Tech, Michigan State, starters. And that's who they're bringing in, not somebody who didn't sort of fit in. And what people that are typically moving in transfers that Syracuse is getting, and I understand the elephant in the room on like a Nate George, he is an exception. I mean, he's somebody who kind of bumped up a little bit within the conference, but was a key player a year ago, all conference, and is not playing at an all conference level this year. But Syracuse is not pulling in, you know, horizontal sort of transfers in from, you know, a Texas Tech, let's say, that competed deep in the NCAA tournament last year and is going to come right in and be a key player on your team. So they're trying. It just is not. It hasn't worked out well enough to this point.
You know, you've been covering this team obviously for a very long time. You know, what do you make of that? You know, the state of the program right now. You know, and you hear, if you were listening to the show today, you hear somebody bring up the fact that there's this article out there on Barstool about, you know, Syracuse is the laughingstock of college basketball, that sort of thing. How do you respond to that when you hear something like that?
I don't pay attention to articles on Barstool. I did read it.
Yeah.
It's, you know, that's not reporting. Okay, that's someone popping off about their experience, which doesn't mean they're not allowed to do that. Of course they are, but let's not pretend that that's a thoroughly reported story about Syracuse's issues. I think what happens is in the conversation, and we all do it, right? The conversation among fans and whatever is an exaggeration, right? Everybody's seeing the tweets. Hey, look at this. Look how awesome it was when you had 35,000 in the Dome against Duke. Why isn't it like that all the time? No kidding. That was awesome. You could do that in any enterprise that you could think about. You're taking the very, very peak and saying, why isn't it like that all the time? It's never been like that all the time, right? That's a peak, and times have changed. It's hard, and they're not doing well enough, right? Nobody, I've said this here when things have not gone great, nobody's standing on the corner of Colvin and Comstock waving a banner about, hey, come look at how good our basketball program is right now, because it's not up to anybody's standards, Adrian Autry's included. So all I can say is that's, they're kind of working their way through it. I don't worry too much about the Barstool thing. It's not a revelation that Syracuse is not at the high point or the peak of its program history right now. I would rather spend more time working about what have been the issues to get to this point and what are the actual solutions.
Isn't it also kind of telling that a different article added is the sixth best coaching job in the conference?
Yeah, again, I think we're throwing around the word article a little differently than I typically use it. The ranking of the coaching is a poll of coaches from around the conference done by the Field of 68. It comes in at Syracuse comes in at 6th. My read on that was that Syracuse was at the bottom of the top tier, right? Everybody thinks, and we all know this, Syracuse takes basketball very seriously, and we do in our community. It's a really important part of what happens here. And there's a demarcation between probably I don't have the list in front of me, but the 6 and then that next group that doesn't take basketball very seriously, like Miami would be one who has no basketball history, but it's gone out the window because they can compete now by flat out paying players and sharing revenue, and they've done a good job with it. They've gotten a great roster and a new coach and a fresh start. They were horrible last year, still beat Syracuse while they were horrible last year, and have put together a good roster, and they just won here in the Dome. So there's a lot more nuance, I think, to all of these stories of where everyone is right now. And you guys talk about it a lot. It comes down to, at the end of the day, they're not playing well enough on the court. And there's a lot of factors that go into that, too. NIL doesn't guarantee you anything other than if you don't spend, you have no chance, generally speaking. If you do spend, you're at least in the game, but it doesn't guarantee that you're going to be where you need to be, or most representative of where you want to be in the pecking order and in the standings. Unfortunately, just the way it is right now, you got to spend to have a roster that can really win. The thing with Syracuse this year is, I think we all were kind of expecting from the jump that they'd be upper middle of the pack and be right on the edge of the tournament. So they're still below that, okay, but they're not. This was not going to be a top 3 or 4 team in the conference this year. So let's measure it to maybe a little bit more realistic expectations.
You said they're not delivering on the court, and there are a lot of reasons for that. One of the reasons that, we brought up with Red and we've been talking about on the show is defensively. They've gotten away from what they were doing at the beginning of the season. And, you call all the games, Matt, you see it front and center. Can you put your finger on why that is, where that intensity has gone, especially in these second halves? And it seems like when things start to get away from them, I think we saw it against Miami. I think we certainly saw it against NC State, where they just kind of waved the white flag there down the end of both of those games. Can you put your finger on why that is happening right now, especially on the defensive end?
Yeah, to me, it's a lack of urgency, really, and I don't know what to attribute it to. I don't know if it is the attitude or the way the coaching staff interacts, or the lack of leadership, or this, that, and the other. I really don't. I'm still looking for the answer there. I think this is a lower energy bunch, and you don't really get the sense that they're racing out onto the court and, hey, we're going to stick it to them today, and that kind of thing, and carrying that energy into the defense. I mean, again, the way they had to play to hang with Houston and to beat Tennessee, in your examples, I mean, that's absolutely pegging in the red. The way that the coach, Red, wants to play is to go all out in short shifts, get new people in. Well, it hasn't worked out that way. They can't go as deep as he wants to go because there is a drop-off when you go to the bench. There are trade-offs with every player that's been in the game. Every guy's got a, strengths over here, but these weaknesses or these issues that keep them from really being at their best. So I'm baffled by it myself. I wish I knew more, had a better handle on what the fix would be. The idea of playing defense pretty well for 25 seconds, giving up a shot and an offensive rebound, and then another offensive rebound in the same set. Those are the types of things that are killing them. A turnover at just the wrong time. They've got a real knack for that. So those types of things are really heightening the issues and putting them in a tough spot right now.
Matt, I just want to let you know so you can answer this. You're getting a little pushback in the chat that Florida State has more basketball NIL than SU. Is that what would you think of that?
I don't know that they do. I think we're talking NIL overall. I mean, I think that they're more of a spender. They probably allocating of their $20 million. Again, now a lot of schools are spending more than the $20 million. We're talking about revenue share plus NIL. Are they allocating more to it than Syracuse? Probably not, but it's not zero. You know what I mean? And they're in that middle of the pack probably as well.
That's the voice of the Orange, Matt Park. Now it's time for National Corn Chip Day.
Wait, I just did the countdown leading into this, and you didn't like my and one.
No, I said I got to do it. Keeps me in rhythm. I got to stay in rhythm, Paulie.
I mean, this is live. Sorry. January 29th is National Corn Chip Day.
Okay, you mentioned that a little bit ago.
Yeah. Do you just eat them plain or queso or salsa?
Definitely plain. If I'm eating corn chips, I don't really love corn chips because they're kind of just very basic and bland, and I don't dip. I don't really dip my chips.
Queso? That is a wild take.
I'll dip in queso. Like tortilla chips or whatever? I will.
That's a corn chip.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Queso.
Nah, you sound like you're covering your...
No, I'm not covering.
Yeah, that was a CYA. You're like, you know what? Even I sound insufferable on this one.
No. When have I ever...
no, I think this one you're like, you know what? I'm eating corn chips right out of the bag like a psychopath.
I will eat corn chips right out of the bag. I will.
You're the one.
Yeah, I do. I don't dip. A little bit of queso, sure. I'm good with that.
All right.
Okay. I know you're not feeling well. Thanks for sticking it out today.
Yeah, and I can't wait till you're sick next week.
I'm going to be sick probably
just keep giving it back and
by
forth
Saturday. I should be sick. That's the plan. All right. For Paulie, I'm Steve. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.